Hi again. This is your serial cynic. And after doing that video last night, a couple of thoughts crossed my mind. And here's another one. Again, I know I've been going back and forth with people in my comment section. And in regard to the Hebrew Israelites, I also acknowledge the fact, and I've acknowledged it in a few of my videos, that there are different groups, different sects of the group. We have those here in New York City standing in the street corners talking some outrageous nonsense, and we have others who are just peace-loving everyday people, not trying to rain anyone's parade, just doing their own thing. But for those who come into my comment section and go after me and try to make it sound like I'm some agent of the devil somewhere, you know, that guy that doesn't exist, or I'm here working for the imposter Jews, whoever they are. This video is more or less directed toward them. Or in a sense, I guess you can say it can be directed to the entire group, no matter which section they're a part of. My question is somewhat simple because I was just thinking about something. I shouldn't say the question is simple. Maybe it's questions I do have. But here is it. When Hebrew Israelites say whatever they have to say, at least from as far as I can tell, they pick up a King James Bible, and that is what they use as their proof, to prove their narrative, to prove their points. I think I've said it more than enough in my videos. I completely discount the Bible when it comes to even using it in such an argument for a variety of reasons. But part of the narrative is that the people in Israel today who call themselves Jews are not the true Jews. They're not the true people of God. They're imposters. Well, I want to know, and maybe I'm missing this, maybe I'm not aware of it, and you can fill me in, clue me in. But I don't recall ever coming across any great work, theological work, works in philosophy based on the Bible that was ever found or done by some great West African Hebrew Israelite that has come down to us today. Maybe there is. Probably just don't know about it. Maybe it's been lost. But I haven't come across any such thing. Now, according to the narrative, these Hebrew Israelites ended up in portions of West Africa, Northwest Africa, some 16, 17, 1800 years ago, fleeing the invading Roman armies of Titus in AD or CE 70, in the year 70, and that they fled to Africa and eventually spread out towards West Africa and became the forerunners of the so-called Hebrew Israelites who were supposedly enslaved and brought over to this side of the world, the Americas. Now, I've never read anywhere where you can say those people over there who claim that the Hebrew Israelites had copies of their ancient writings, their ancient scriptures. I've never read any such thing. I've never heard of any such thing. Interestingly enough, on the other side of Africa, in Ethiopia, which is much closer to what we call Israel today, you can go over there and you can find an Ethiopian text of what we call the Bible. They have one over there. Or they have a text that's attributed to them, that has been preserved by them for, what, thousands of years now? But when you go to the other side of Africa, where all this hibbaloo about We are Hebrew Israelites. You don't find any such thing over there. You ever heard about copies that were kept by the escaping Jews as they ran into Africa and kept copies amongst themselves? You haven't heard anything like that. Nothing has ever been, at least as far as I know. I could be wrong. And it wouldn't be the first time. But I haven't read about any extant copies amongst them that has been passed down or handed down or preserved amongst these alleged Hebrew Israelites in West Africa, amongst the Igbo and the various people that people say are descendants of the ancient Israelites. And then I haven't heard about any great rabbis who sat down, and because you have to understand, places like Timbuktu and so forth, these were the capitals of a great empire. And supposedly within these empires you had Hebrew Israelites. And you had a fantastic library over there and a bunch of literate people. And while I know a lot of the writings have been lost and whatever, you've never heard about a copy of the Hebrew scriptures being preserved or being passed around or being known about when it comes to that area of the world. So what do Hebrew Israelites have to rely on? The King James Version Bible. The King James Version Bible. A book that was commissioned by a white man, translated by white people, and eventually made its way into the world of the colonizers who came and colonized this side of the world, and the people who eventually enslaved our people. That's the book Hebrew Israelites rely on to make their points. Why have we never heard of a copy, an ancient copy that was handed down, or copies that were handed down, or that was smuggled out, or snuck out, or escaped with the fleeing Jews when Titus came in to invade? You would think that would be something that, since that meant so much to them because it contained their spiritual history, their association with their God, their imagined association. If it was so important, why haven't we heard about any of that stuff being preserved amongst them? And that Hebrew Israelites today, or 100 years ago, or 150 years ago, or 200 years ago, have to whip out a book that was translated by a white man or white people and saying, see, this here proves this here proves that. Something sounds a little fishy to me with this. And it would have been one thing if I could turn around and say, hey, these Hebrew Israelites in Western Africa, they were illiterate, they didn't know how to read, they didn't know how to write. No. West Africa had some of the greatest empires of this world. Literate people. People who were literate, people who were knowledgeable about so many things before so many Europeans even got a clue about half of these things. And I'm to believe that nowhere in all that literacy, we don't have any great Hebrew Israelite scholars and rabbis and works, writing from these scholars left behind for their posterity or their people. But yet, when it comes to talking about those imposter Jews, you can look down the list and you can find a whole bunch of scholars amongst them in Europe. And their writings are still around. Why is that? If you have an answer, meet me down in the comment section. I would like to discuss this. Again, because I may not be considering all things. You can help me out with that. I may not know of certain things. You can help me out with that. Perhaps a Hebrew Israelite can pop in and say, hey, don't you know that Rabbi so-and-so in the year 940 CE wrote this scholarly work on the book of Genesis or the book of Nehemiah or something like that. Maybe you can tell me about it. I've never heard of it. I've never seen any of this stuff. So perhaps you can fill me in. Okay? This is your Serial Cynic. Until the next video, comment, share, like, and let's have a ball with this. All right? Take it easy.